So there are some significant concerns about potential inflation. Right now, a big conversation around the way the price of eggs has spiked. And obviously some of this conversation also has to do with Trump's proposed tariffs and proposed and beginning already mass deportations. So Jamie Dimon got asked about, potential tariffs and whether they could potentially cause inflation, and had a bit of a flippant response. Let's take a listen.
Trump talked about tariffs just yesterday. Mary Erdos, your colleague, was on stage talking about how your firm has created a quote-unquote war room that's looking at each of these executive orders as they come in, trying to assess what they mean for the bank and I imagine for your clients.
Yeah. So we always, war room may be a bad word, but this is a real-time, full thing, analyzing for clients, for communities, for a bank. We get a million questions, stuff like that. Look, I look at tariffs, they are an economic tool. That's it. They're an economic weapon, depending how you use it and why you use it and stuff like that. And, people argue, is it inflationary and non-inflationary? I would put in perspective, if it's a little inflationary, but it's good for national security, so be it. Get over it. National security trumps a little bit more inflation. But I think the question is how they get used. Can they be used to bring people to the table? Yes. Is there some unfair trade? Yes. Is there some state-owned subsidies? Yes. Is the president going to use that way in his team? Yeah.
So, he says, get over it. So be it.
Really what is he's singing a very different tune, because prior to this, nobody hated tariffs more than Jamie Dimon. So let me just, I don't even disagree necessarily with what he's saying. I don't say get over it is the correct opinion. I think
very easy for a billionaire to be like.
Super easy for him to say.
You'll be fine.
My response would be, yes, there's a national project here, and part of any tariff strategy will also be making sure that prices don't massively increase. That's what a politician should say, but it's ludicrous for somebody like him to change his tune so quickly on tariffs, especially speaking of freaking Davos.
Yeah.
The whole Davos thing, I can't even believe they continue to do it. Even after all the memes and conspiracy,
I find it very useful,
and everything. Oh, of course, you're absolutely right.
Those interviews like that with Andrew Ross Sorkin, that's where we got that Alexander Wang interview as well. Right. And they always say a lot of very revealing things, and I think it's important to listen and take them at their word.
You're not wrong. Just for them, I'm like, you have no self-awareness. It's like you guys should lock yourself back in Bohemian Grove and do this the proper way. Not, wear masks and don't talk to anybody else on a microphone. Yeah, you should.
It's a sign of how much they feel that they've conquered the world. They're like, we can just do this out in the open. We can just tell you fools what we're up to and the way we're going to shape the entire world. And to a large extent, who can say that they're wrong? Look at the way that oligarchs have completely bought the U.S. government and are operating it to their own ends, and you understand. And you also see, I think you're right about Jamie Dimon, who even before the election had actually really shifted the way he was talking about Trump. Previously was a huge Trump critic, Democratic donor, all that stuff. And, after seeing the first Trump administration, being like, he gave rich people a giant tax cut. It wasn't so bad. He kind of changed his tone and became much more comfortable with the Trump administration. But the whole tenor of the discussion on inflation has really shifted a lot, because obviously, both in the midterms and in the presidential election, voters said their number one issue is inflation. And you can understand why, because having this huge spike in food and fuel prices really is difficult for people who are already living at the ragged edge and struggling to be able to put it all together, especially with the cost of living crisis in general, how expensive housing prices are, et cetera. And, the Trump campaign really focused on, hey, we're going to be the ones who can bring prices down, and the Biden administration failed you with this, et cetera, et cetera. Now that they are taking office, there's a bit of a different tone that is being struck. J.D. Vance was pressed on this by Margaret Brennan on the Sunday shows. Let's take a listen to that.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress. We're, of course, going to have more executive orders. And we're going to try, the way that you lower prices is that you encourage more capital investment into our country.
So fair enough that Trump has only been president for 5 days and does not have, complete control over pricing of all things, let alone, eggs, which we're about to talk about specifically. But I think they are making a bet, Saagar. I think they've always made a bet. It just wasn't really foregrounded that people will tolerate some price increases if they can convince them that it's in the overall national interest.
I think that's true.
I think that's their political. I don't actually think that is true. But their economic policy, the two main planks are, the deportations plus tariffs. You will readily admit, anyone who's being honest will readily admit that both of those things are likely, at least in the short to medium term, to lead to price increases. But they're betting that they can tell a story about that that will make people be like, I can manage this and it's quote unquote worth it.
I mean, I do think that there is an element to it which is true. So when I go to Japan, there is a guy who's driving the taxi who the taxi driver is wearing white gloves and a suit. And it's a profession, and he takes a lot of pride in that. It's not something that is a stepping stone to go doing something else. That guy gets paid a lot more than any taxi driver in America. It's a good experience for him and for me. It's gonna cost more. And so I think that's one of those things where I've been thinking a lot in terms of, like you said, with prices, we have two visions of American society. We can be the one where price is everything, and that means that we're all widgets, we're all consumers. The price of each individual good itself is the sole determinant of my happiness. The price of my stock index going up 22% as opposed to 17% is far more important than whatever might be paid in that interim 5. The Trump administration is offering basically an economic nationalist view, of which almost every other country in the world adopts, from Germany to Japan to any European welfare state, which is, there's going to be some stuff that's going to be more expensive. Some people, though, will get paid more. We will live in a society in which we feel as if we're all a little bit more together. I mean, and this is both actually a leftist and a rightist kind of solution to this like centrist neoliberal view of GDP. So I basically agree with you. They are going to need to be careful, because what I think the Trump administration's greatest danger is, it was from the first administration, it was the feeling of chaos, lack of process, and things being out of control. And so right now, one of the things about Trump, which is great politically but necessarily bad governmentally, is he'll just throw things at the wall. So for example, in that speech yesterday before Congress, he said, we're going to put tariffs on Taiwan. Now look, philosophically, do I think Taiwan should pay more and all that? Yeah, definitely. But, we're also doing this at a moment where NVIDIA stock just went down by 17%. Yeah. What if it causes a massive stock market crash? And what I would argue is worse is just throwing things out there all the time, which can be great from a negotiation perspective, as we saw with Colombia or whatever. But if you have chaos where things are constantly yo-yoing like back and forth, and people don't feel as if there's a coherent agenda, then of course they're going to default to, well, hey, man, my prices are going up and I don't even feel as if I'm getting anything for this.
And that's the piece, because what you articulated is a at least coherent worldview of, prices aren't going to be and that is the way our society is structured right now. Like Western you are more of a consumer than you are a citizen, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the way our antitrust regulation was reinterpreted to be, as long as people are getting lower prices, then there's no concern about these giant monopolies. They're only to the good. That has been the market logic. The view you explain is, well, no, we're going to raise prices on certain things, but you're going to have a higher wage. The problem is that, especially now in this in this iteration of Trumpism, with Elon Musk really running the show in a lot of respects, that piece about the wages is, that's missing. Because these are people, Elon Musk literally wants to get rid of the entire National Labor Relations Board, right? He wants to be able to bring in H-1B indentured servants to undercut American wages. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who just got confirmed, says he doesn't believe in a minimum wage at all whatsoever. The tariff, the program that has been like sort of theoretically floated of we're going to get rid of income taxes, but we're going to make up for it with tariffs or a consumption tax potentially, that is wildly regressive. That is going to take more out of people's paychecks who are, working class and middle class, et cetera. So that's the part where it really doesn't work. You can't spike prices and people are still getting exploited and have no labor power and have low wages and, getting like screwed and worked harder and harder with lower and lower returns, and housing prices are going up, et cetera. You can't, those two pieces politically, they're not going to work ultimately in the long term. So if you're going to invest people in this totally different conception of society of, okay, prices aren't everything, we have strategic and national goals, and we're going to prioritize your wages, that piece has to be there. Like, people have to feel like their wages are going up. And I see much evidence in the other direction that what the actual priority is making it easier to fire striking workers, making it easier to bring in H-1B and H-2B indentured servants to undercut American wages in these various industries, et cetera. So this is kind of like the Steve Bannon versus Elon Musk fight, because Bannon's vision is much more like the one you articulated, and that is not Elon Musk's vision.
That's part of the issue
whatsoever.
This is the fundamental tension within Doge, within Elon, within the entire Trump administration. I would even say between JD and Donald Trump's coalition. If you look at all of these people, JD Vance, I will not speak for him. I would never dare to. I'm just saying, like, I interact with him. I've interviewed him many times, and in those, he's like I would think is largely the vision that he would articulate to you. But Donald Trump also is a person of a big coalition. And with Elon, I mean, for example, there are already signs of huge fights. So I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but one of the things that Trump said, which has really thrown a wrench into all these reconciliation arguments, is he says he will not sign a bill that cuts a single penny from Medicare or Social Security. And he says that at the very same time that Elon is tweeting about massive entitlement fraud and about how there needs to be a serious review and a rethink. We've seen this also in the OMB and their own theories is like about what we want out of visa, like H-1B, H-2B, what all of that will look like. I mean, really, I'm fascinated to see when the next real immigration bill comes across, because right now, all ICE operations are currently about people who are criminals. Like, we haven't even talked about people who are here illegally. But beyond that, even bigger question is like, well, what about the legal system? Like, how many people are being, it's a literally zero-sum number in terms of, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 1 million, where we currently are. What's the number? What type? What is it going to be more H-1? Or we're going to increase the allotment, right? That would be a huge subsidy to the technology industry. So I'm very curious to see how that all comes out. And that's what I mean about the danger here for Trump. Is the other problem is that the market does not reward anything that I am saying. The market only rewards short-term gain. I mean, even look at this whole NVIDIA thing. Even the idea, they're like, oh, NVIDIA's stock anyway. Yeah, NVIDIA's back to where it was in October. Okay, so the trillions and trillions of dollars of value have been created. It could drop 100%, it would still be up from where it was a while ago. My point is that these guys have to live and die and sweat by the quarter, where a nation should not be governed that way. And the problem that we have is that all of our elites are currently governed on the basis of this like quarter by quarter, stock market by stock market profit. I mean, even right now, there's a discussion and a fear in the markets. They're like, are the days of 22% year-over-year growth in the S&P 500 over? I'm like, okay, so what? Like, I know this is a very privileged thing to say, but like, okay, that's an abnormal thing. The historical average is like 8%. If it goes to 12, so be it. There's some, there are a lot of reasons for that. And that's why I just articulated. I think it's going to be very, very difficult, though, for Trump. And like I said, all of the incentive monetarily behind him and really behind the entire American elite is to think in this quarter by quarter theory. And so if you get a situation where you have higher tariffs and you have big corporate giveaways and all this, and you lose, like you said, the Bannonist argument here, which has a coherent view of immigration restriction of higher wages and is obviously diametrically opposed to a lot of what these tech guys want. That's going to be the big fight. And if you have a mix, you actually end up getting the worst of both worlds. And I think that's a huge risk right now for Donald Trump in this administration.
Yeah, where you end up with low wages and high prices.
Yeah.
And I mean, based on the way, Trump sided with Elon on this big H-1B fight, that seems to me very much the direction that they're heading in.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.